Fengtian stone locks the seal of Tianheng, Zhu Yan slaughter, 1,000 rivers of blood, Qilin Pu Ren brings forth all things. On one side is the ambitious and weak master of the world, on one side, there are deeply ingrained enemies with mistaken thoughts and feelings like a blazing flame, burning the eternal green and black underworld. Manju Shahua's love for red roots cannot escape the fire of burial industry. The curse of the underworld penetrates into the bone and attaches to the marrow. Two pairs of CPs, constantly missing each other. May you live or die together. Keywords of the novel. No pop-up window for Frost-Slaying Sorrow. Download the complete set of Frost-Slaying Sorrow TXT, and read the latest chapters of Frost-Slaying Sorrow. Chapter 1. Old illness, life and death urge the heart. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Old illness, life and death urge the heart. Didn't you mean to forget me? Be sure to forget completely. I will also forget you. In the city of eternal remembrance, I will forget you and everything completely, forever. 1. Old illness, life and death are heart-wrenching. The heavy wooden door was hoarse with a single sound. A little boy around 5 years old was pushed in. The door immediately closed, and an iron lock tightly locked the only exit. The light in the room was unusually dim, and the hungry eyes of 2 wild wolves flickered with a faint green light in the darkness. Their sensitive noses immediately smelled the fresh smell of human flesh, and in the blink of an eye, they pounced. The little boy instinctively waved his cane in his hand. A dazzling red light swept towards one of the hungry wolves in the darkness. The wolf immediately rolled to the ground. Another hungry wolf had already pounced and bit tightly onto his left arm. The narrow room was immediately filled with a bloody smell that drove the hungry wolves crazy. An hour later, the locked door opened. The thin and small figure slowly crawled out, covered in bloodstains. 2 hungry wolves were lying inside the house, and one wolf's neck was twisted upside down. He was still holding the cane tightly in his hand. The cane was already covered in blood, and the head of the cane was carved with a white-haired and bearded ape face. However, the eyes on that ape face were as red as flames, appearing particularly eerie and dazzling in the dripping blood. The spring breeze is flourishing, and the mountains are as deep as the sea. The blue sky is filled with flowing clouds like silk, and layers of lush greenery flow in the gentle breeze. The warm spring sunshine poured down on the rooftop garden. The tall wudong tree in front of the window whispers in the gentle breeze, casting mottled light and shadow on the carved window lattice. A man in white is sitting by the window, reading a scroll in his hand. Eyebrows thick and eyes deep, nose straight and mouth square, fingers slim and wide. Although he just sat calmly, he naturally exuded a majestic aura, not angry but majestic. His broad snow-white long shirt was finely embroidered with blue pine branches, exuding a strong and imposing aura. Just his face, but exceptionally pale. Pale as the last trace of autumn sun fading away. Under the corridor outside the window, a man in his 40s was sweeping the fallen leaves with a broom. His movements were extremely light, as if afraid that the faint sound would disturb the people inside the window. Suddenly, there were 2 sounds of dong and da coming from inside the house. The man was startled and immediately threw down the broom in his hand and ran into the door. I saw a roll of scroll fall to the ground, and the white-clad man sitting by the window was lying on the table, his veins bulging with his hands tightly gripping the edge of the table. He let out a series of painful low growls from his throat, and his face was rolling with large beads of sweat. "Lord," the cleaning man shouted loudly. The sound of hurried footsteps immediately echoed in the silent manner for days. 3 men rushed over, also in their 40s. All the people in the village, no matter what important matters are at this moment, are no longer important and are gathered by the Lord's side. "Mo Xing, how is Lord?" The 3 of them were still some distance away from the door and had already asked loudly. At this moment, the man who had just rushed into the house to clean up quickly replied, "Lord, your old illness has broken out." Seeing the 3 of them enter, he immediately said to one of the long-faced and soft-footed men, "Zhengde, open the door quickly." At this moment, the Lord is sweating profusely, panting heavily, his face as white as paper, and his lips gray. As Mo Xing spoke, he had already picked up the lord and walked towards the door, saying to the other two men, "Yuxing, listen to me, hurry up too." Zhengde rushed out of the door ahead, turned to a room on the left, took out a slender golden key, quickly opened the door, and walked inside. Yuxing and Yin Ting immediately left the door, turned around, and quickly ran towards the corridor on the right. Mo Xing hugged the lord and followed Zhengde's footsteps into the house. There is a large wooden bucket for bathing in the room, and Zhengde has opened the large lid on it. Mo Xing gently placed the lord into the large wooden barrel. The lord's hands tightly grasped the edge of the barrel, constantly emitting painful low growls, trembling all over, as if enduring a bone-wrenching and heart-wrenching pain. The wooden barrel doesn't look very old, but the edges are already covered with overlapping, deep and shallow palm prints and finger marks. He had already taken hot water and placed it in a large wooden bucket, which was 2 circles larger than his entire body. Yuxing also followed in with a large wooden bucket, which was filled with steaming hot water. That water doesn't seem to be ordinary water. Slightly green, with a hint of black, and emitting a strong herbal flavor. Mo Xing had already stripped the lord of all his clothes, and Yuxing and Yin Ting slowly poured the medicine he had brought into the large wooden bucket. Zhengde helped Mo Xing hold on to the lord to prevent him from falling. Although their actions were extremely swift, they were all orderly, familiar to each other. The potion spread all the way to the lord's shoulders, and the steaming heat tightly wrapped around him. It took about a stick of incense for the lord to finally stop his painful roar, but he had lost consciousness and closed his eyes tightly. Yin Ting and Yuxing scooped out 2 large buckets of medicine from the wooden barrel, while Mo Xing and Zhengde helped the master sit down in the barrel. Some new hot potions have been added to the wooden barrel. The lord was half lying in the wooden barrel, with the potion all the way up to his chest, and the steaming mist enveloped him heavily. Mo Xing looked at the dark and pale face of the lord in the mist with a worried expression and said, "I don't know what's going on with you, Zhu. Have you received the snake gall?" The other few people also nervously looked at the lord in the mist. This kind of situation will happen again soon. Previously, it happened every 2 to 3 years, later it happened every extra year, and later it happened every 6 months. In recent years, it has been shortened to once every 3 months. And every time the lord wakes up, the duration of his awakening becomes longer and longer. Everyone's heart is becoming increasingly tense, because every time, it can be the last time. So they never dared to slack off at all. In order to make him live again, Yojue, you must get the snake bile back, several people said in their hearts without hesitation. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Snowy mountain collapse and 1,000 ghosts cry at night. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Snowy mountain collapse and 1,000 ghosts cry at night. Weizhou, Shishir Mountain. The thin sun is hidden deep in the continuous dark clouds, only slightly shining in the gaps between the clouds. The dense wooden leaves almost blocked the faint light. The narrow, damp mountain road leading to the mountaintop was stuffed with lying demon bodies, leaving almost no place to rest. These demon clans have lost their breath, and their unbelievable faces are frozen with the final appearance of ferocious pain, which can be imagined as the agony of death. A snow-white figure and several clean ups and downs quickly arrived before these corpses. He stopped in his tracks. There is a demonic force shaking in front of me. Like half of a water wave constantly rippling open. This demonic power is full of excitement and killing energy. These demon tribes seem to have all died here. There are still some demon tribes wandering and probing in the outer circle of the demonic power, but looking at the corpses all over the mountain, they never dare to rush into the shaking demonic power. A month ago, news suddenly spread about the recruitment of fellow practitioners by the snake witch Shus at Shishir Mountain in Weizhou. Wu Lv claims to have a cultivation of 5,000 years. Is a fellow cultivator with 5,000 years of cultivation something that ordinary little demons can covet? But Wu Lv claimed that fellow practitioners only recruit those who are destined, regardless of their level of cultivation. And once recruited as a fellow practitioner, a Xian Gui Dan that can increase one's cultivation by 2,000 years will be gifted. As soon as this news came out, both some demon tribes with cultivation and those with shallow cultivation came to Wash Stone Mountain to give it a try. Wu Lv planted 3 layers of demon soul waves on Shishir Mountain, calling them destined individuals. As long as they can withstand these 3 layers of demon soul waves, they are those who are destined to practice together. Now it seems that this demon soul realm wave has already killed countless demon clans. The young man standing on the edge of the demon soul realm waves, his snow-white clothes were adorned with exquisite embroidery on the front and cuffs. Half of his right face was covered by a blue mask, and the exposed left face was as smooth as glass, beautiful and stunning. He held a cane over 3 feet long in his right hand. The head of the staff is carved with a white-haired and bearded ape face, with its eyes blazing red like flames. Is this the demon soul realm wave? The young man slightly tugged at the corner of his mouth, lifted his body, and jumped into the shaking demon power. In an instant, the demonic power in the wave of the demon soul realm was squeezed like a tide, and the young man's body was covered in a circle of sparkling white light, enveloping him completely. Is the Jade Ju light wall sufficient? The young man, surrounded by the walls of jade, refused to step on the bodies of the demon race filled with mountain roads. He rose and fell among the trees, leaping forward. Running forward for a while, the number of corpses on the mountain road gradually decreased. Suddenly, a powerful shock struck head-on, accompanied by the sound of wooden leaves swaying and stirring. It seems that this is the second level. The boy leaped into the second wave of the demon soul realm in front of him. The more we move forward, the more violent the oscillation of the demonic power becomes, and the Jade Ju Guang wall shakes and crumbles. The young man quickly stimulated his own internal strength, and saw the sparkling white light gradually being tinged with a layer of crimson. The Shisei light wall firmly protected his entire body and passed through the second wave of the demon soul realm. In the third layer of the demon soul realm, there are scattered corpses of the demon race lying in the waves. Unlike the painful and ferocious appearance of the other 2, the corpses of these demon tribes are almost all lying in a pool of blood. The boy suddenly stopped in front of a corpse. This demonic corpse fell to the ground. A blood hole about the size of an index finger was pierced through the back of the neck, and the flowing blood had already solidified for a long time. His eyes were fixed on the back, with an incredulous expression on his face. The boy lowered his eyes and ran forward again with his feet pulled out. The third wave of the demon soul realm, with demon power several times stronger. The Shisa light wall began to shake and shake under the impact of fierce demonic power. The young man further boosted his internal strength, stabilized the Shisa light wall, protected himself, and stepped on the green grass, continuing to run towards the center of the demon soul wave. Wu Lv should be right there. Suddenly, the demon soul realm behind me was enveloped in a powerful force of coercion and rushed towards me. Are you a demon tribe competing with fellow cultivators? The young man quickly turned around, and his cane had already swept away a dazzling white light. Spring Mountain Snow Training. In the dim light, a black figure leaped backwards and gently landed on the side of a corpse stained with blood on its chest. In its hand, it held a large, icy knife with a snowy blade. A smile appeared on the wrinkled face of the old tree in the dark shadow, and he chuckled lightly, saying, "No wonder you reacted so quickly, no wonder you were able to enter my third realm wave." As he spoke, the boy's originally calm eyes suddenly became scorching and piercing, and he sneered, "Are you a witch Shu?" "That's right." Wu Lu's eyes looked up and down at the young man, suddenly showing a hint of surprise. "Are you not a demon race?" The young man's eyes also stared at him and said, "You have some power." "It's a bit interesting that a human can break into my demon soul realm wave," Wu Lu said, and then clicked twice. "Unfortunately, I'm not interested in humans." The Shisa light wall swayed in the fierce impact of the demon soul realm waves, but it was not yet broken. A sneer reappeared at the corner of the boy's mouth and said, "I'm really interested in you." Wu Lu lifted the large knife in his hand and flicked the blade with his left hand, causing the blade to make a deafening roar like a tiger's roar. He looked at the young man and said, "Don't worry, since you're all here, I'll do my best to give you a ride." As he spoke, he had already swung his sword towards him and shouted loudly, "Quick battle, quick resolution, suffer death." The blade swiftly pressed against it with heavy demonic power, and with the fierce impact of the demon soul realm waves, the Shisa light wall instantly shattered. The young man retreated repeatedly, and immediately Zhang Kaixia covered the light wall, with a deep red light wall tightly enveloping him in an instant. Wu Lv's big knife fiercely struck the deep red glow wall, causing the wall to shake violently. The young man's cane swept out at this moment. Xia Ran Qinlian. 3 red and white beams of light rushed towards Wu Lv in unison. Wu Lv quickly placed his big sword horizontally in front of him to block 3 beams of light. The blade is infused with its own demonic power, and with the help of the demonic soul wave, there is no danger in this situation. But Wu Lu was greatly surprised and looked at the young man in the rosy wall, saying, "How could you have the power of Zhu Yan?" The young man looked at him coldly and snorted coldly, "What's with you?" Wu Lu suddenly showed a joyful expression on his face, and he put his big sword back on the ground, leaning on it. He said, "Since you have the power of Zhu Yan, there's no need to try. From today on, how about practicing with me?" As he spoke, he reached out his hand to the boy and stepped towards him. The young man stared at him in the rosy wall, but did not take a step. The third wave of the demon soul realm is still fiercely colliding with the rosy light wall that protects his body. Wu Lu looked at him motionless and walked towards him with a smile, saying, "It's because I didn't think carefully. We need to collect this demon soul wave first before we can talk." With a wave of his left hand blocking the sky, the wind and leaves fell in an instant, and the waves of the demon soul realm dissipated. Those little demons who were tormented in the waves of the first and second realms, with their internal organs almost shattered, suddenly felt relieved all over. The demon soul waves suddenly disappeared. They all immediately got up and rushed forward. "To find Wu Lu, we must get Xian Gui Dan." "Alright, the demon soul realm wave has withdrawn. Let's have a good conversation about fellow practitioners," Wu Lu said to the young man again. The young man smiled at him and removed the rosy walls that protected him. Wu Lu's smile deepened as he reached out his left hand to pat the boy's arm and said, "That's really great." At the moment when his left hand touched the boy's right arm, he immediately burst out of his palm with a fierce demonic force. Take advantage of his lack of defense, take the initiative. But the warmth of the boy's arm suddenly disappeared, and his figure had taken a few steps back in the blink of an eye. 3 red and white beams of light had rushed towards him. Wu Lv immediately dodged on his side, but was half a step late and was hit by a beam of light on his left arm, falling back 3 feet away. Turns out he's already on guard. Doing the same calculation as myself. I only caught a beam of light and my blood surged. This person, Zhu Yan, is probably extraordinary. Wu Lu fell to the ground before he could even get up, and immediately triggered the wave of the demon soul realm again. This time, the waves of the demon soul realm no longer spread to the mountainside, and all gathered within 3 zhang. This time, the waves in the demon soul realm are even more turbulent than before, with a momentum like a torrent. The little demons who were running faster and had already arrived nearby were suddenly rushed towards by a fierce wave of demon soul realm, falling backwards one after another, and falling fiercely to the ground, instantly losing their breath. A deep red glow filled the walls of the demon soul realm once again appeared in the waves. Wu Lu jumped up and pointed a large knife at the young man in the rosy wall, shouting, "So you're not here to practice with me? What exactly is your purpose?" The young man snorted and said, "Whoever wants to practice with you, just obediently hand over your snake bile." Ha ha ha. Wu Lv suddenly burst out laughing, how dare you want to take my snake bile? What a big breath. The surging demon soul realm waves are filled with rosy clouds, and the walls are like flowing water surging and surging. The young man stood still among them, looking at the witch's shoes and said coldly, it seems that I need to come and pick it up myself. Wu Lu said loudly, although Zhu Yan has an unfathomable cultivation as a divine beast, you are just a mere mortal body. How much can you score him? What I am worried about are all miscellaneous little demons. Their demon power is too weak, not enough for me to smack my lips. I didn't expect such a big deal. Speaking, he burst into laughter again. The young man looked at him inexplicably and said, what's going on? Wu Lu pointed his big sword at him and said, anyway, you are also a dying person. You have sent me such a big treasure again. I might as well tell you the truth. More than a month ago, I was seriously injured, almost killed, and even consumed most of my demonic power. In order to heal my wounds and restore my demonic power as soon as possible, that's why I set up a triple demon soul realm wave on this Shirshi mountain and sent out the recruitment of fellow cultivators. The boy understood something after hearing these words. So, the so-called recruitment of fellow cultivators is just a cover-up. Your real goal is to attract the demon race to come and let you absorb the demon power, the young man said. Not bad, you understand quickly, Wu Lu said. The young man looked at him with disdain and said, so, the Xian Gui Dan that can increase one's cultivation by 2,000 years is simply nonsense. What else would I need to put in all this effort to have such a wonderful thing? Wu Lu said, but since you're here today, all I need to do is suck on your demonic power and turn Zhu Yan's power into mine. The other miscellaneous little demons are nothing but garbage, and I have to do more with them. As he spoke, he raised his big knife over his shoulder with both hands and shouted, take it to death. He swung his big knife fiercely, unleashing a fierce demonic force that was even more victorious than before. This time, we need to succeed in one fell swoop and put him to death. The surging demon power, with the help of the waves of the demon soul realm, poured down like a mountain. The young man stood among the rosy walls, inspiring the power of Zhu Yan. The red color on the light wall is deeper and more intense. The surging demonic force fiercely collided with the Xia Man light wall, causing it to shake violently. The demonic power has dissipated. The light wall is safe and sound. Wu Lu snorted discontentedly and said, you have some cultivation. He raised his big sword with both hands again and said, I have been practicing the death of the underworld for 3,000 years. This time, I will make you die immediately by my sword. Another even more powerful demon force swept through the demon soul realm and collided with the deep red light wall of the young man. A red light suddenly rolled up from the young man's cane, reaching straight towards the magical power of the witch shoes. Autumn River Blood Jade, I have only been practicing for over a decade, can you withstand it? The young man said coldly. The demonic power of the big sword was shattered by the red light, and the witch shoes were knocked back a few steps. Wu Lu was greatly surprised, but at the same time, he was also excited and said, I didn't expect Zhu Yan's power to be so fierce. Since he brought it to his door today, it's mine. Wu Lu raised his big sword hands to his chest and said, Thousand Ghost Night Cry has gathered all my demon power and all the demon power of the demon soul realm wave. Today, I must kill you. He accumulated all his demonic power and used all his strength to wield his big knife. The sharp piercing sound echoed through the deep valleys and forests in an instant. 100-year-old tree uprooted and fell to the ground with a loud roar, the hard boulder on the towering cliff also cracked deep and wide open, the demonic force, like the collapse of a snowy mountain, rolled up the shattered rocks and broken trees and rushed straight towards the boy's location. The deep red glow covered the walls and shattered into fragments. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Recurrent Diseases. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Recurrent Diseases. Wu Lu showed a satisfied smile. However, after all, I have not fully recovered from my serious injury, and there can be no mistakes at this moment, so he immediately jumped up and quickly flashed towards the direction of the boy. A torrential and powerful demon force swept through like a landslide and sea crack, and a dazzling red light suddenly burst out from the shattered deep red light walls. This radiance is deeper and heavier than the crimson color of the previous autumn river blood jade, and is as deep and intense as the rosy glow of the wall just now. The blood-like radiance that has not yet condensed. This deep and bloody light covered the sky and ground, instantly breaking away all the demonic power of the witch shoes, and then fully rolling towards the dense forest, cutting off this towering ancient tree. The waves of the demon soul realm have also been completely shattered. In the blood-colored light, 2 long strands of white whiskers flew out from the young man's forehead. Under the blue mask, long white whiskers also flew out. The boy's hands have turned red. Before he could pause for a moment, he immediately turned back and swept out the same staff again. The sky was filled with red clouds. In the crimson glow of the sky, a slender and sharp iron rod held in the right hand of Wu Lu fell 1 foot away from him. Wu Lv's body was protected by a circle of red light. What's going on? Wu Lv was still uncertain, and the monkey wand had already broken through the Xia Man light wall that protected Wu Lv and directly hit her face door. The rosy glow shattered the walls, and the witch's shoes fell 3 zhang away heavily, unable to rise to the ground. All of this is just between lightning and flint. Wu Lu widened his eyes and said with difficulty, "You, how do you know me? I will ambush from behind." The young man withdrew his cane, his white beard had faded from his face, and the white beard on his forehead was quietly hanging on both sides of his face. One side is glazed like jade. On one side, the mask is icy blue. "Because I saw the demon corpse you stabbed to death from behind the neck," the young man said calmly. "Also, when you walked around behind me just now, your breath didn't completely hide." The young man walked up to the large knife that had fallen to the ground, picked it up, and walked step by step towards the witch walking. He slowly said, "Your demonic power is not strong, and your methods are too easy to detect. You died unjustly." Wu Lu watched in horror as he approached closer and closer, turning over with all his might, trying to struggle and escape. The young man approached and fell with a clean and swift sword. Wu Lu maintained a struggling and crawling posture, transforming into a giant snake about 2 zhang long. The young man once again wielded his knife and swiftly cut out its warm snake gallbladder. Looking at the bloody snake gallbladder in his hand, the young man's cold face revealed a gentle smile. The white beard in front of the forehead turned into a jet black color again. "I helped you again, don't forget." A voice, coming from within oneself. It's Zhu Yan's voice. I can't be more familiar with it. The young man smiled and said calmly, "Ah, once again. The spring scenery is bustling, the flower patterns are hidden, and new green layers flow like a stream. The young man in white is moving forward rapidly amidst the heavy green stains on his clothes. The cold blue mask on his face exuded a sense of solemnity, which was incompatible with the spring scenery of this mountain. The young man, however, seemed to have no intention of this spring scenery and only focused on rushing on his way. Arriving at a place in the mountains, he suddenly stopped and stretched out his hand, drawing a semicircle in the air, and disappeared in an instant. Only a mountain remains empty and silent. The young man stood outside a majestic mansion, with a golden plaque carved with a coiled dragon and the 3 characters, Qi Tian Zhuang, written on it. He reached out and pushed open the intricately carved bronze gate, walking towards the depths of the village. 2 people have already emerged from the corridor. One doesn't work, the other listens quietly. The 2 of them hurriedly welcomed the young man and said, "Yojue, you have finally come back." Mo Xing, listen quietly, the young man also welcomed him. "How is master?" "He is Mo Xing, waiting day and night for the Yojue to bring back the snake bile." "Lord, a few days ago, your old illness flared up again, but fortunately it's not a big deal," Mo Xing said. As long as master is fine, Yu Ju said, I have obtained a snake bile and will go see master first. That's great. Mo Xing and secretly listened with joy, then let's go quickly. 3 people walked together towards the place where the Lord resided. The Lord knew that you must turn around. He put down the scroll in his hand and stood up calmly. He walked to the door and stood under the heavy shade of wudong. Yojue stepped into the last moon gate and saw the familiar figure under the wudong at a glance. The originally sturdy body was so thin that only bones were left, making the embroidered clothes appear too loose. The pale color on his face was like a residual lamp in the wind. A pair of deep eyes, yet calm and majestic, exuding a majestic aura that oppresses the world. Yojue walked up to the Lord, knelt on both knees, knelt down, and said, Master, Yojue has returned. The Lord nodded slightly, how about it? Yojue raised his head, with a bright light in his eyes, and said, the snake bile has been taken. Take out a small oilcloth bag from your chest and hold it up with both hands. The Lord's face lit up with a rare smile and he said, get up. Yojue stood up. The Lord said to Zhengde, who had just arrived, come and take a look. Yes, Zhengde stepped forward and took the small bag containing the snake bile from Yojue's hand. He opened it and carefully examined it, suddenly making a puzzled voice. What is this? What's wrong? Said Yojue Qidao. Mo Xing, Yin Ting, and Yu Xing, who came with Zhengde, all nervously looked at Zhengde. The Lord also looked at Zhengde, but there was no expression on his face. This snake gallbladder seems to have been injured but not fully recovered. Zhengde said. Yojue remembered what Wu Lv had said at that time. He had indeed said that he had set up the demon soul realm to absorb the demonic power of other demon clans because he was seriously injured. Can this snake bile still be used? Yu Ju quickly asked. Mo Xing and others were all staring at Zhengde, waiting for his answer. Zhengde's face was a bit gloomy, and he pondered, the 1,000-year-old snake bile used to have extraordinary medicinal effects, but judging from the degree of damage, I'm afraid it was once heavily injured. Now, it's hard to say how much effect it can have. How could it be like this? Yu Ju, Mo Xing, and others suddenly heard Zhengde's words, as if they had fallen from the clouds into an icy lake, and looked at the Lord together. The Lord's face was solemn and he said in a deep voice, Zhengde, let's go refine it first. Yes, I'll go to the pharmacy now, Zhengde said, hurriedly leaving with the snake bile. The capital city of Huanyue Kingdom, Jinghua City. Tianheng. A tea house with a reputation of over 20 years and a gathering of celebrities. The melodious sound of the flute came from somewhere, not very loud, but it drifted through every corner of the Tianheng. The noisy people in the tea house all enjoy listening, as if all the troubles in the world have never been touched. A luxurious lady in her 30s walked leisurely to the innermost room on the 3rd floor. Pushing open the carved wooden door, I saw a person standing tall in front of the window, lightly pressing the jade flute. Your flute sound is quite beneficial, even my mind is refreshed, said Fu Renren. The person in front of the window put down the jade flute and turned around to look at her with a smile, saying, Yusu, please tell me to wait so long. This woman is the head of Tianheng. Yusu. Yusu smiled and said, Ziqing, you threw it all at me. I have to see it all up and down the outer spring this day, right? Ziqing smiled faintly and said, you've really worked hard these years. Yusu nodded and took out a stack of silver notes from his sleeve, saying, please take a look at these, Lord. Ziqing took a look and saw that there were tens of thousands more than usual. He smiled and said, it seems that besides Tianheng, tea houses and wineries in other places are also quite prosperous, and Yusu's contribution is indispensable. The Lord is determined to be in the world, how could he take these things seriously? Yusu and Wu Heng are just trying their best, Yusu said. Ziqing collected the silver bill and said, I will bring it back to Qi Tian Zhuang for your inspection. Yusu's face suddenly showed a few layers of solemnity and he said, "What's wrong with Lord?" Ziqing held the jade flute in his hand and frowned with concern, saying, "You know, it only happens once every 3 months now, and every time it's a glimmer of life." As he spoke, he asked again, "Is there any news from Yojue?" Yusu listened and took out a slightly yellowed book from his sleeve, flipping to one of the pages. "Hold the book with your left hand and scan the page with your right hand to grasp the formula." Ziqing remained silent to avoid disturbing her. After a moment, Yusua loosened his right hand and exclaimed with joy, "Messenger Dao Yojue has already taken the snake bile back to Qi Tianzhuang. This is really great, truly a seclusion." Ziqing was also delighted. "I will go back to Qi Tianzhuang now." Ziqing immediately set off on a fast horse and arrived at Yinzhou in a few days. Send the horse to the stable and hike out of the city towards the mountains. Returning to Qi Tianzhuang, he immediately went to the residence of the venerable master, Kowtout, and presented the silver receipt he had received. "After days of hard work, let's go down," said the Lord. Ziqing stood up and said, "I heard from Yusu that Yuju has already taken the snake bile and turned around." The Lord nodded slightly and said, "Not bad." Sure enough. Ziqing's heart was filled with joy and he said, "Has the medicine already been made?" "Zheng Desheng is refining," said the master. 3 days later, Zheng De finally refined a black pill and presented it to the Supreme Lord on a brocade plate. Yojue, Moxing, Ziqing, and Yinting all stood by. Everyone held their breath and didn't hear a sound inside the house. "Lord, take the pill and take it." All eyes were focused on the Lord. A month has passed. The Lord is safe and sound. 2 months have passed. The old illness did not recur. As the last attack approached 3 months, everyone in the village felt like a string that would break at a touch. 2 months and 1 day, 2 months and 2 days, 2 months and 3 days, 2 months and 20.1 days. The Lord wakes and sleeps as usual every day. Although he has not seen miraculous improvement, his old illness has not recurred. Did the snake bile really take effect this time? So far, in order to curb the old illness of the Lord, over the extreme cold, picking the top snow lotus from an iceberg, I have been to the frontier of the desert and captured the soul of a century-old eagle climbing over thousands of cliffs and digging for the roots of a 1,000-year-old ginseng king. Whenever Zheng had to speak up, you would never have spared no effort to retrieve Qi Tianzhuang. However, the old illness of the Lord is still getting heavier day by day. Is this really okay? Time passed day by day, and Yojue became even more worried and unbearable day by day, almost keeping her eyes open all night. Finally, it will expire in March. The old illness of the Lord has not recurred. The people in the village felt that they could finally breathe a sigh of relief. There is also a transparency in Yojue's heart that seems to crawl out of death. That night, Yojue finally squinted his eyes. Tianguang fuming opened his eyes. Looking at the sky, he got up and walked out the door, bypassing several corridors and heading towards a room where the sound of a flute wafted out. Outside the door, I saw a person standing in a long robe, standing by the window, playing the flute and enjoying themselves. "Ziqing," said Yojue. Ziqing saw him come in and stopped the sound of the flute. "The sky is still early, why not take a break?" Ziqing said. "I don't feel tired. I haven't finished reading the book that Ziqing taught me last time, but I can continue to explain today," Yuju said. Ziqing was his mentor, however, they only referred to each other by their names. Because there is no seniority, no hierarchy, and no mentorship between them. They only have one common master. "Okay, then sit down," Ziqing said. So he also sat down opposite Yojue, opened a book called The History of Qi, and told him. Suddenly, there were hurried footsteps running in the courtyard. The sound of footsteps. The people in the manor have always followed the rules and regulations, coming and going calmly. There is only one situation that can make everyone nervous. Yojue and Ziqing were greatly shocked in their hearts, and immediately got up, quickly snatched out the door and headed straight to the master's room. Before we arrived at the door, we did see that Mo Xing had already carried the Lord out. The face of the Lord was so pale that it made people feel palpitations and sweat profusely. He tightly gripped Mo Xing's shoulders with both hands and let out a low growl of pain. This familiar scene made the lonely heart sink into the eternal ice cave. The snake bile did not cure him, not even a little improvement. Mo Xing turned into the room with a large bathtub while holding the master. Yin Ting and Yi Xing turned around and went to the corridor on the right to get the medicine. Zheng De opened the large lid on the large bathtub. The Lord entered the large bathtub, feeling weak and powerless. With only 2 hands tightly gripping the edge of the bathtub, a low scream of pain followed. Due to the frailty of the old illness, the voice was not loud, but when Yu Ju heard it in his ears, he was as frightened as thunder. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Solitary Journey to the East China Sea 1. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Solitary Journey to the East China Sea 1. Finally, the Lord fell silent. Sitting unconscious in the large bathtub with closed eyes. Mo Xing once again carried the Lord back to his bed, gently placed him on the bed, and covered him with a blanket. Yojue has been silently following by. The Lord has been sleeping soundly. He didn't open his eyes until the next night. Yojue stood alone by the side of the Lord's bed. The Lord's face turned even paler than when he first met in Qi Tianzhuang. Over the past decade, Mo Xing's eyes have grown several fine wrinkles, but the Lord has not changed much. However, his figure seemed to have become even thinner. The time it takes to wake up during each episode is getting longer and longer. How can one cure this disease? If this continues, will he still wake up smoothly next time? No, this time. Yojue suddenly opened the door and hurried to Mo Xing's room. Pushing open the door, Mo Xing sat silently at the table. Seeing Yojue come in, he didn't even knock on the door and quickly stood up to welcome him. Lord! Mo Xing looked at him nervously. What exactly is Master's illness? Yu Ju stared straight at him. Mo Xing listened to his question and knew that there was nothing wrong with the Lord, so he breathed a sigh of relief. More than a decade ago, you once said that only I could save him. Over the years, no matter how difficult it was for Zhengde to obtain any medicinal herbs, I would take them, but none of them could cure him. Yu Ju said, holding on to Mo Xing's arm tightly with both hands, tell me, what should I do? Mo Xing's eyes were burning with flames as he stared at him for a moment before speaking. You are already able to subdue snakes, and your cultivation is beyond our reach. I should tell you about this. Since that's the case, speak quickly. Upon hearing this, Yojue let go of the hand that had grabbed his arm. How long is a person's life? Mo Xing looked at him and asked. It's only 100 years, said Yojue. How many years are there in heaven and earth? Mo Xing asked again. Heaven and earth are endless, said Yojue. Mo Xing nodded and said, not bad. Lord has been planning for many years and has a broad vision for the world, but life is only a short few decades. Even if one gains the world, one day's death will only be in vain. So, 25 years ago. At this point, Mo Xing walked to the window, gently pushed open the wooden window, and gazed into the vast darkness. Since he opened his mouth, Yojue no longer urged him. 25 years ago, there was an outsider by the side of the venerable master, who had high magical power and was quite skilled in supernatural arts. Mo Xing looked back from afar and slowly continued, he fought a 7-day battle with a turtle deep in the East China Sea, gaining the turtle's heart and feeding it to the venerable master. This turtle has been cultivated for 10,000 years, and if it eats its heart, it can achieve eternal life. However, Mo Xing's eyes were still gazing at the distant night sky, as if looking at that day 25 years ago. Yu Ju didn't interrupt, waiting for him to continue speaking. When taking this heart, it is necessary to use the Qianquan illusion formation to assist. The alien had already exhausted his magical power in the battle with the divine turtle, but the opportunity could not be missed. Therefore, he reluctantly drove the formation to help the Lord take this heart. At the critical moment, he was disturbed by others, the formation was broken, and the person died on the spot, and the Lord fell from this illness. So Master fell into such an old illness. Ju finally understood the cause of this illness, but he couldn't help but wonder, who can break the formation? Master, those who secretly listen and Mo Xing are people with deep cultivation. How can ordinary people get close to him, let alone break through such a crucial formation? A strong opponent has its own strong opponent. Although we tried our best to protect the formation, in the end, we could only protect the Lord and escape, and from then on, we will hide here. Mo Xing said. Now, how can we save our master? Ju saw that he had something he didn't want to express, so he didn't ask further. At this moment, he only wanted to know the answer to this question. If you want to completely eliminate this condition, you need two things, Mo Xing said. What two things? Ju hurriedly said. Firstly, someone must be able to obtain the Qiankuan illusion formation, Mo Xing said. The Qiankuan illusion formation has never been heard of. The Qiankuan illusion formation. Who would have obtained this formation? You couldn't help but frown. The method of driving the Qiankuan fantasy formation is well known to the Lord. It is only through the divine power of Zhu Yan that it can be achieved. Mo Xing looked at Ju and said, now that your divine skill has been achieved, this formation should not be difficult. Upon hearing this, Ju exclaimed with joy, that's great. Ju should do his best. However, this second one is difficult, Mo Xing said. What is needed for the second thing, pursued Ju. Secondly, there must be something that can help people live forever, Mo Xing said. There is no need to worry about the Qiankuan illusion formation, but that eternal thing is only afraid. Mo Xing frowned tightly. Eternal things. Are you talking about eternal ice mushrooms? Ju said. If we talk about the eternal ice Ji, many years ago Yu Su had already sent envoys to search everywhere, but to this day, nothing has been found. Ju also frowned and slapped the window frame, saying, eternal things, heaven and earth, where should we go to find them? Mo Xing looked at him and remained silent for a while before finally speaking. Actually, the divine turtle was originally one female and one male. What he took that day was the heart of a male turtle, and now there is still one female turtle available. Upon hearing this, Ju was immediately overjoyed and said, since I have this item, I will definitely retrieve it for my master. This turtle has been cultivated for thousands of years, and it is not easy to capture its heart. Besides, Mo Xing sighed, Your Majesty's ambition to conquer the world is all entrusted to you. If you have any shortcomings, Ju still needs to come back and help Master set up formations. Be careful of stubborn illnesses. Ju said, take good care of Master, I'm going to the East Sea now. After saying goodbye to Mo Xing, he quickly walked out and left the manor that night, heading straight down the mountain towards the East China Sea. The next morning, Lord awakened. Ju was not by his side, but he saw Mo Xing kneeling inside the house. Why kneel here? Where is Ju? The Lord asked. Ju has gone to the East China Sea. Please treat your sins, Mo Xing. Mo Xing continued to kneel. Upon hearing this, the venerable master's face, which had always been expressionless, suddenly changed color. He got out of bed and slapped Mo Xing's face. Mo Xing knelt down and fell to the ground. He immediately got up again and knelt down in his original position, lying on the ground and saying, Your Majesty's illness cannot be delayed any longer. If you don't take the risk and give it a try, I'm afraid. There is already a clue about the Buddha Bell incident, and with a little time, it will definitely be found. How can Ju go to the East China Sea? The Lord angrily said, Listen to me. Ziqing, Yin Ting, and others stood at the door, listening to the call. Yinting hurriedly entered the room and knelt beside Mo Xing. "Go quickly, catch up with Yu Ju," said the Lord. "Yes. I secretly listened to the command. Master." Mo Xing stood up to stop the silent listener walking towards the door, then knelt back and said, "The Buddha bell is only recorded in ancient books, and it is unknown whether it actually exists. The Zhonghua mountain has been searched many times, and there have never been any ice mushrooms or divine beasts, so elusive. The turtle is in the East China Sea. If you can gain the heart of the turtle, Master can wield his army to enter Jinghua city and ride horses to the world." "Shut up." The venerable Master's pale face showed a slight blush, whether due to anger or anxiety. Back then, Yu Ren's death was all due to the battle of the divine turtle. If it weren't for this, the world would already be in my hands. Now that Yu Ju has appeared, it is the heavens who helped me to wash the moon. How dare you act on your own? If he can't turn around, who can drive the Qiankuan illusion formation? Yu Ju has been practicing with the Lord for many years and has been able to use Zhu Yan's divine power effortlessly. His power today is probably above that of the same day's resilience, and he will definitely be able to gain the Lord's eternal heart and help him achieve his great wish for the world. Don't kneel down. Besides, Yu Ju knows that the transformation of heaven and earth requires Zhu Yan's divine power to drive it. He will cherish and take care of it. The Lord can rest assured. Zhu Yanqi is full of anger. When he encounters danger, he will rise up. I'm afraid he won't be able to do it then. The Lord glared at Mo Xing angrily. The cultivation of resilience is a technique of thick soil, which can effectively restrain the divine turtle. There is no such technique available in Yojue. With his current strength, he can't hold the divine turtle. If he dies in the East China Sea, how many lives can you exchange for? End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Solitary Journey to the East China Sea 2. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Solitary Journey to the East China Sea 2. Go chase him and come back, he whispered to his ear. Turning his head to the dark, I secretly followed orders and went out to chase after them down the mountain. The Lord's remaining anger did not dissipate, and he looked solemnly at Mo Xing and said, Mo Xing, you should know how to do it. Those who disobey the Lord will die. Mo Xing replied, bowing to the ground and kowtowing to the Lord 3 times. Mo Xing cannot dirty the Lord's land. He will find a place to settle himself. After speaking, he stood up and walked out of the door of the Lord's house. Wait a moment, said one person, blocking the way, but it was Ziqing. Ziqing stopped Mo Xing, knelt at the door with both knees, and arched his hand towards the inside of the house, saying, Lord, although Mo Xing has made inappropriate suggestions this time, he is worried about the Lord's dragon body. His feelings can be pitied. I hope Lord can think twice. The Lord is inside the house and has not spoken. Next to him, Yixing also knelt down and said, Mo Xing has been following the Lord for many years. He is loyal, and his heart can be seen. I hope the Lord can give him another chance to redeem himself. The Lord looked at the two of them and said outside the door, Don't go in. Mo Xing knelt on the ground outside the door. I remember that you have devoted yourself to protecting the Lord and have worked hard for many years. Today, I will spare you from death, said the Lord. Mo Xing, thank you for your kindness. Mo Xing prostrated himself on the ground. However, in the future, you will leave Qi Tian Zhuang and don't have to come back, said the Lord. Mo Xing was stunned on the spot, not knowing what to say. Ziqing and Yuxing are well aware of the temperament of the Lord, and this is particularly kind, and they dare not say more. Lord, Mo Xing can no longer serve you. Mo Xing kowtowed to the ground again, but his voice choked up. You, take care of yourself. Stand up, kneel down again, give a big bow, turn around and leave in love. Yu Ju left Qi Tian Zhuang in the middle of the night and hurried all the way. Arriving at a town, I picked a good horse and headed towards the East China Sea to sweep away the dust. On the way, he neither entered the shop nor rested for a while. When he was hungry, he would take a few bites of his own dry food, and when he was thirsty, he would drink a few sips of water from the river by the roadside, and then continue to gallop on horseback. Suddenly, a person shouted from behind, "You Jew, stop." When I looked back, I was secretly listening. I saw him walking rapidly, running towards me. "What's up?" Yojue restrained the horse and turned his head. Looking at the darkness and listening to the dust on his face, I think he never stopped all the way. "Is there anything wrong with master?" At this point, he was greatly surprised and quickly said, "How is master doing?" "Master, you are safe and sound." Upon hearing this, I stopped in front of the secluded horse. Upon hearing this, Yojue breathed a sigh of relief. "The Lord has ordered me to come and let you return to Tianheng with me," he whispered. "Is there anything urgent?" Yujue said. "Lord, I don't want you to go to the East China Sea to risk yourself. I want you to go back with me immediately," I whispered. "Yujue will definitely win the heart of the divine turtle, please rest assured, master." Yujue said. "If you have something to say, you can explain to the Lord that since I have received my order, I will definitely take you back today to report it," she whispered. "Then it depends on whether you can stop me," Yujue said, turning the horse's head and running forward. Yin Ting extended his hands, and 2 strands of white silk flew out of his sleeves, rolling straight towards Yujue. The Yojue monkey wand is in hand, and a white light suddenly appears. 2 strands of white thread break and fall to the ground. However, those who have been following the Lord for many years are not ordinary people. Using his internal strength, 7 thin white ropes with wrists flew out, 2 rolled towards the running horse legs, and the other 5 rolled towards Yojue's legs, hands, and an ape cane in his hand. That horse couldn't avoid it, it was caught on all 4 legs by a white rope and fell out completely. Yojue jumped up, but was entangled in one of his right legs. Dark listening not only surpasses the speed of a 1,000-mile horse on foot, but also has an incredibly fast attack and evasion speed. With a tremble of his right hand, a white rope instantly turned into a 7-foot sharp blade, approaching Yojue's face. Yojue did not dodge, but a red light shot from the red ape's eye on his cane, deflecting the 7-foot sharp blade to the side. Suddenly, my body tightened and my arms were bound by 2 white ropes coming from behind, tightly pressing against both sides of my body. "Follow me back," I whispered. "Humph, can you trap me like this?" Yujue said coldly. "Close your eyes, drive the magic, and the white light is like a knife, cutting the white rope on your body into pieces." Raising his cane, he swung out a spring mountain snow exercise, with white light like a pillar and a speed like a shooting star in an instant. With the speed of listening in darkness, he was unable to avoid it. I secretly listened and covered my left shoulder, falling 3 feet away. "Go back and take good care of your master. Yujue will definitely return to Tianheng with the heart of a turtle." Before he could finish speaking, Yujue's figure was already 1 foot away. 7 days later, Yojue finally arrived at the shore of the East China Sea. He found a small boat and searched for the traces of the eternal turtle in the vast sea. The cold seawater rolled up high and slammed heavily against the dark rocks, scattering countless snow-white jade beads of various sizes. The back waves pushed and then rolled up huge waves, splashing like rain on the hard stones. Yojue has been searching for many days, but there is no trace of the divine turtle's breath. He shook his small boat and searched deeper into the sea. On this day, Zhu Yan's senses finally caught a faint breath. That breath seems to be still far away, but it's enough. Yojue was pleasantly surprised and immediately turned the small boat around, shaking it in the direction of the breath. The closer you get, the stronger the aura becomes. Yojue stopped rowing and stood up. Zhu Yan's sense has locked onto the sea area in front of him, and the divine turtle must be hiding here. Yojue held his cane flat on his chest, condensing his magic. The tip of the cane pointed out and a slender white light, like a needle tip, pierced into the deep sea. Although the white light is thin, it illuminates the sea with a vast expanse of white. In no time, I saw the sea rolling and surging, and a huge turtleback emerged from the water. With its wide back, it is enough to build a palace. If we follow Mo Xing's words, this turtle has been cultivating for thousands of years and is extremely fierce, so I dare not neglect it in my heart. At present, the monkey wand swung a spring mountain snow practice and a white light stabbed at the turtle's head. The giant turtle quickly retracted its head into its shell, which received white light but remained undamaged. Seeing that Yojue was not kind, the divine turtle swung its front leg. Although it only made a slight swipe, the seawater flew straight up and rushed towards Yojue on the stone. The water carried a compelling force, and the hot airflow inside Yojue immediately surged, forming a white jade barrier in front of Yojue, blocking the rushing waves. Although the divine turtle has a huge body, its neck is extremely flexible and flexible. That turtle shell is incredibly hard, it is its most powerful barrier. Kwang Yojue's small boat is limited, and the waves are rushing to dodge difficulties. But the giant turtle is free and agile in the water, and can even use seawater as a weapon. I don't know what kind of cultivation the person who killed the male turtle was, and what kind of situation it was at that time, but it must have been an extremely difficult battle. Today you have no idea whether you are alive or dead, but Master's old illness is critical and cannot be delayed any longer. No matter how difficult it is necessary to take the heart of this female turtle. The Yojue monkey wand swung a Xia Ran Qian Lian, and two cold white lights, mixed with dazzling red, hit the giant turtle's front leg. The giant turtle seemed a bit angry when he saw his fierce attack and deep killing intent. Beat up 3 huge waves, 2 blocking the white light flying towards you, and 1 curling up the secluded rocks. Yojue drives magic and protects itself with a silver-white jade barrier of light. The waves hit hard against the light wall, causing it to tremble violently, revealing several cracks. Who are you? Why are you disturbing my purity? Suddenly hearing voices, when Yojue fixed his gaze, he saw a brown figure standing on the back of his glands. Her face is like an 18 girl, with silver hair dancing in the air. The person who came to kill you. Ju shouted loudly. You're so reckless, kid. The person didn't say much either. With his long sleeve in his right hand, he swung a water memory forward, and the huge waves rolled up again. This time it was even more turbulent, with the wave more than a foot high, and the wave was not very shaped. It came from the front, overwhelming the sky and earth, and the secluded night light wall had just formed, which had been shattered by the huge wave. The small boat under my feet also shattered and scattered wooden blocks were swept several feet away by the huge waves. The waves engulfed Yojue, enveloping him heavily. The brown man's long sleeves were recycled, and his strength suddenly increased in the waves. He felt pain all over his body and bones. In the body, a scorching airflow surged wildly, with a crimson glow like countless sharp blades, dividing the endless sea water into millions of falling water columns. Yojue fell into the water and quickly resurfaced. What kind of person are you? The brown figure shouted sternly when it saw the red light. The one who took your life. Ju said. Zhu Yan is in this world, and the world will inevitably suffer. Today, I will end you here. After that person finished speaking, he didn't wait for Yojue to answer. At the same time, his sleeves waved a move called Pisces Play, and 2 huge walls of seawater rushed towards Yojue. Ju's Dian wave front, quickly retreat backwards. The killing intent in the 2 water walls is like a flood, and the scorching airflow inside the secluded body is also like a volcano erupting. The autumn river blood jade is flourishing, and the red light explodes, illuminating the entire sea surface like a raging fire. 2 water walls were pierced and hung down, returning to the rolling sea. Yojue stepped on the red light, standing on the water surface, with two long strands of white beard dancing in front of his forehead. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Fatty Bone Battle 1. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Fatty Bone Battle 1. Can't you control yourself anymore? The brown figure said. Leaving you alive will surely harm the world, suffer death. Turning her body, she stirred up the vortex of the deep sea, and saw her graceful clothes and silver hair swirling and flying with her figure. The seawater rolls up a vortex, like a huge gyroscope, spinning rapidly towards Yojue. Feeling the impending situation, I am afraid I have no spare strength to protect myself with the light wall. The huge vortex pushed mountains and seas, and Yojue could only feel the scorching airflow inside his body spewing out like a volcano, difficult to control himself. He raised himself to the sky and let out a roar, like a beast, with white whiskers growing under his blue mask. As soon as the crimson glow swept across the sky, 1,000 zhang red light burst forth, deep and intense, spreading a blood-like glow that had not yet condensed into the sky. The hand holding the ape stick has also turned fiery red, and a pair of red eyes on the ape stick also emit two blood-red rays, blending into the 10,000 zhang red light, rushing towards the huge vortex. The vortex dispersed, and pearls and jade splashed everywhere. The brown figure suddenly turned into thousands of water droplets scattered in the sea. Yojue also poured into the water, and a faint red light lifted his body up. Yojue struggled to get up. The water droplets suddenly flew to a place and gathered again into a humanoid shape. Look at yourself. What's the difference between you and the evil beast Zhu Yan? The person exclaimed. Yojue reluctantly stood still and raised the ape staff again. The person shook his head and said, Do you know that you have been eroded by Zhu Yan? Every time you use Zhu Yan's power, it will further erode you. One day, it will completely devour your mind. Zhu stared straight at her and gritted his teeth, saying, What I want is your heart. Taking advantage of this little gap, he once again regained his internal strength and quickly swung out a red glow that filled the sky without hesitation. With this blow, he has exerted Zhu Yan's power to the limit. Be sure to strike with one fatal blow. A water wall suddenly rolled up from the sea, blocking the person heavily behind. The deep red and intense blood light fiercely collided with the water wall. The water wall instantly shattered and thousands of water droplets fell into the seawater. It seems that you are demanding death. The person was also furious. Place both hands on your chest, lightly pinch the thumb and index finger of your left hand, and lean your right hand against the palm of your left hand to create a fearless seal. The 10 zhang high water wall, carrying the momentum of a sky-shattering and earth-shattering, surrounded from all directions toward seclusion. However, this time there is a difference, and this body will inevitably be shattered like powder. Yojue dared not neglect and immediately drove up the blood jade light wall, a red and black light wall guarding him tightly inside. The cultivation of the 10,000-year divine turtle is truly unfathomable. But if you have to give up the turtle and leave, you can never. My master once instructed that if blood disgust swallowing heaven encounters a powerful opponent, a slight mistake may break the seal, so it should never be used when he is not by his side. But today's situation has no other choice but to give it a try. The 10 zhang water walls rolled up by the fearless Dharma seal in all directions collided with the red and black blood jade light walls, shaking violently. Quickly, it shattered and dissipated under the momentum of the collapse of the sky. The brown figure snorted slightly and said, Under the fearless Dharma seal, there is no doubt that one will die. The water wall broke apart and began to scatter into the sea. Amidst the layers of water curtains, suddenly a red and black beam of light, resembling a flying dragon, rolled out like lightning and rushed straight towards the brown figure. The person was taken aback and immediately produced the fearless seal again, this time using 10% of their mana. I can't see how high the water wall is once again pressing down from all directions. Zhu Shui detests devouring the heavens, and can only reluctantly protect oneself with the Shi Se Guang wall. The red and black beam rolled towards the brown figure like a tyrannical dragon, but was blocked and dissipated by heavy water walls. Under the pressure of the fearless Dharma seal, the Shisei light wall shattered completely. Yojue was completely unconscious and slowly sank into the sea, with blood staining half of the water. The brown figure held the jade hand lightly, and a sparkling water sword was already in its hand, piercing down towards Yojue. Suddenly, a faint blue light emerged from Yojue's body, gently lifting him up, peaceful and peaceful. The blood on Yojue's body is slowly stopping. The person suddenly saw this scene and couldn't help but be taken aback. He exclaimed, "So there's also the Qilin inside." After a moment of thought, he withdrew his water sword and sighed, "Human life is not insignificant. I wonder what your fate will be in the future." Thousands of water droplets scattered into the sea, and the brown figure disappeared without a trace. The giant turtle paddled out on all four legs and swam towards the distance. After an unknown amount of time, Yojue Fong woke up leisurely. "Look at yourself lying on the water." Strangely, what lifted me up was a faint blue light. "What's going on?" I quickly tried to drive away Zhu Yan's strength, but his anger was very weak. And another distant, familiar, yet unfamiliar warm and gentle airflow rose slightly with Zhu Yan's scorching heat. I have also experienced this airflow a long, long time ago. Yojue was startled in his heart and immediately struggled to get up, feeling a tearing pain all over his body. Fortunately, the ape stick is still tightly held in hand. He knelt on the water, gazing at the reflection of himself in the water. His snow-white long beard had disappeared from his forehead, and his hands were as usual. The blue mask on the right face is also missing. I'm afraid it has shattered and fallen, washed away by the seawater. He suddenly felt a tightness in his heart and immediately squatted down to get close to the sea to carefully look at his face. It's gone. For many years, there have been many dense and slender hairs on my right face, which is why I am wearing a half-blue mask. But now those fuzzy hairs have disappeared completely, as if they had never existed before. The right and left faces are surprisingly smooth. He quickly stood up and placed the ape cane across his chest, trying again to harness the power of Zhu Yan, but his anger was still very weak. Looking down at the blue light below, I couldn't help but frown. It seems that the seal planted by Master has been broken, and this blue light is the power of the Qilin. The power of the Qilin and the power of Zhu Yan were in conflict, so Master sealed the Qilin and solely nurtured the power of Zhu Yan. Now that the seal has been broken and Zhu Yan's power has been exhausted, what should be done? Further exploration of the giant turtle's aura exhausted Zhu Yan's strength and yielded nothing. No way. I must kill that old turtle. If it weren't for this old turtle's heart, Master, next time thinking this way, looking at the vast sea, he once again forcefully drove Zhu Yan's magic. However, the scorching airflow was now as weak as a thread. It seems that the injury was severe this time, and we need to first think about restoring our mana. Now I can't lift my breath anymore, surrounded by deep sea water on all sides, so I have to lie down on the sea again and regain my spirit. Take a look at the sunset in Shishan, gather some strength, slide into the water, and swim towards the shore. After swimming for an hour, my physical strength was exhausted and I gradually lost consciousness and sank into the water. At this moment, a thin layer of blue light emanated from within him, steadily lifting him up and floating on the sea surface. After a long time, the seclusion awakened. The sky is bright. Looking at the blue light under his body, he knew that Zhu Yan's power had been exhausted and he was no longer able to protect himself. Now he relied entirely on the power of the Qilin. He rested for a while, waited for some energy, and then swam towards the shore. After only swimming for 2 hours, the pain all over was at its limit, and I was extremely tired. I wanted to try to use the power of the Qilin to hold myself from sinking, but the method taught by my master to use the power of Zhu Yan seemed to be ineffective, and the layer of blue light was nowhere to be seen. With a thought, one relaxes their body and allows themselves to sink downwards. Sure enough, the Qilin's blue light resurfaced and lifted him up. Yojue lay down in the blue light, gazing at the distant blue sky. Suddenly, some blurry fragments that were old, distant, and thought he had completely forgotten appeared in his mind. A pair of tender hands. A faint blue light appeared. The withered yellow grass leaves gradually fade away and turn green again. The tender yellow dandelion's broken flower stem gradually heals in a small hand. Hey, Yojue said, why are you and Qilin inside my body? End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Steamed Bones and Chaotic Wars 2. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Steamed Bones and Chaotic Wars 2. There was no sound. There is no answer. Yojue stared blankly at the blue sky for a while. A pale face emerged from the swirling clouds. Master, is he okay? I can't waste time here anymore. So he started swimming again, and when he was tired, he still lay down again to rest under the blue light of the Qilin. After repeating this process, I swam for 3 full days before reaching the shore. Climbing ashore, lying down on the beach, unable to move, decided to sleep in place without moving. Lying down all night, I could barely walk by dawn. Try driving the magic, but Zhu Yan's qi is still extremely weak. Recalling the words of Ziqing in the past, there is a plant of fat bone grass growing deep in the eastern sea of Mingshan, which can heal and nourish qi, and has a miraculous effect. Even those who are seriously injured and dying can use it to prolong their lives, which is exactly what it is used at this time. Identify the direction immediately and set off towards Shueming Mountain. He was seriously injured at this moment and walked slowly, taking about half a day to reach the foot of Shueming Mountain. The sun is already leaning towards the west, and the slanting light is pouring between the grass and trees. The mottled light and shadow sway gently with the gentle mountain breeze. I am really tired from walking, so I have to sit under the tree and rest for a while. Trying to run, the internal force seems to have slightly recovered compared to before, but the hot airflow is still very weak. Moreover, Yojue noticed that the power of Zhu Yan seemed to be under some kind of control, unlike before when he could call out at will and do as he pleased. And there will always be a gentle and peaceful atmosphere in the body, accompanied by the hot air flow that rises slightly. As Master said, the power of the Qilin will indeed restrain the power of Zhu Yan. He leaned his back against the thick trunk of the tree, pressing his head against the rough bark, and there was no sound in Zhu Yan's body. Why are Qilin and Zhu Yan inside their own bodies? After his master planted a seal for him, he never felt that soft and warm breath again. Over the years, he had completely forgotten it and only followed his master to focus on the power of Zhu Yan. Now I forcefully drive away the blood-loathing devouring the sky and have been shattered by the divine turtle seal. Once again, I feel the gentle, calm, and peaceful atmosphere that is completely different from the fiery, scorching, and seemingly destructive violence of Zhu Yan. He turned his head and picked up a half-yellow leaf that had fallen to the ground, staring at it for a while. The leaves have not changed at all. He tried again, silently praying in his heart as before, hoping that this leaf could recover as new, but there was still no change. The leaves in his hand are still half-yellow and slightly withered. After so many years, too many things have become unrecognizable. Yojue looked up at the flickering sunlight between the wooden leaves and said, if it weren't for meeting my master, would I be as safe as I am today? I don't know what situation master is currently in, but are you still okay? If I cannot obtain the heart of this divine turtle and let my master's illness continue to develop. Yojue shook his head fiercely, reached out to support the trunk, and stood up. We need to quickly find the fatty bone grass, restore mana as soon as possible, and then search for the divine turtle. As the Qin said on that day, this fat bone grass should grow in a cave on the shady side of Shueming Mountain. Yojue looked up at the sky and walked towards the dark side. Fortunately, this mountain is not very high. After climbing for more than half an hour, we have reached the mountainside. I searched on the mountainside and never saw any entrance to the cave. Jigu grass can also be considered a rare treasure in medicine, and its location may not be easy to find. Yojue rested under the tree for a while, got up and searched again, carefully examining the soil, light, color, and types of plants and trees everywhere. There is nothing to be gained. Under the cage of night, everything was dark and Yojue fell to the ground exhausted, so he decided to sleep. The next day, I woke up and searched carefully again. Suddenly, I realized that there was a difference between the soil and other places, and there seemed to be some faint light. I reached out and gently pressed on it, but there seemed to be no mountain soil behind it. Yojue tried with his hands to pull apart the tangled branches and vines. These branches and vines seem to have grown for decades, some as thick as adult arms, but they cannot be pulled. If it's just bare-handed, it's probably difficult to move it away. The power of Zhu Yan in his body is still very weak, but these vines are just ordinary things and can be given a try. So Yojue raised his ape stick and mobilized his internal power. A small dagger-like white light passed by, and the branches and vines were all broken. Sure enough, there was no mountain soil inside, and a small hole appeared. Yojue used his hand to pull open the broken branch, and the hole appeared. Upon entering the cave, with the faint light emanating from the opening, a gray-white mushroom-like plant could be faintly seen shining like stars on the low wall of the cave. It is quite consistent with what Xiqing said, so it must be jigu grass. The rest also grew some yellow or white weeds, and Yojue ignored them. She went straight to pick the fat bone grass on the wall and still came out of the hole. After walking only a few steps out of the cave, suddenly 5 or 6 people came down from the mountain, each holding guns, swords, and other objects. Suddenly, he caught a glimpse of the object in Yojue's hand, and the one walking at the front, dressed in a Tibetan military shirt, was around 40 years old, holding a pair of copper maces. He stared at Yojue for a moment, then turned around and gave a glance to the people behind him. A group of people rushed forward and surrounded Yojue in the center. Sanqing Wushan walked forward and clasped his fists at Yojue, saying, "Young Xia, do you know what you are holding?" If in normal times, these people are not opponents, but at this time Zhu Yan's strength is still weak and he has not recovered from his serious injury. If he takes action, he will inevitably suffer losses. Yojue looked coldly at the Sanqing martial shirt and said, "Excuse me, what advice do you have? I don't dare to take it for granted." However, the young hero has a healing medicine called jigu grass in his hand. We have been searching in this mountain for many days, and I don't expect it to be found by the young hero. "Can you please make concessions, young hero?" said Sanqing Wushan. "Why should I let you?" Yojue looked at them with a fierce gaze on their faces, and his heart was already displeased. As soon as he spoke, it seemed that he was determined to get what he wanted. If he didn't agree, he would have to take action and grab it, which was even more unpleasant. Moreover, I also need this fat bone herb to heal my wounds, so that I can find the divine turtle as soon as possible. How could I compromise? A few people were already restless when they heard his tone. "Young Xia, it's not that we intentionally made things difficult, it's just that our general is protecting our territory, but now we can't afford to be seriously injured. We need this fat bone grass to save our lives and heal our injuries. I hope you can do something convenient, young Xia." Sanqing Wushan said, looking at his sincere words, not like an impolite person. Just a few others, but never relaxed at all, staring closely at Yojue. Yojue scanned around and tried the power of Zhu Yan in his body, but there was no improvement. Seeing him silent, a person holding a long spear said, "Captain Hua, don't nag him. It's important to save the general." Speaking, he raised his spear and stabbed at Yojue. Ju quickly dodged and avoided. "Stop it!" Captain Hua shouted. The person with the long spear really stopped stabbing. Hua Xiaowei took out a small white bottle from his arms and said to Ju, "I see that the young hero's face is pale. I think it's because he's injured. I have a bottle of high-quality jade pill below, which can help the young hero recover as soon as possible." "No need, Yojue said. Under severe injuries today, surrounded by these people, there is no chance of winning, but it is also impossible for oneself to give up this grass with him. Young Xia is indeed unwilling to compromise, so Huo will have to offend him. Hua Xiaowei no longer tried to deal with him. The other few people saw him relax and rushed forward together. For a moment, the cold sword, long spear, and others all stabbed towards Yojue, but looking at the positions where they were stabbing, it seemed that they didn't want to harm his life. Yojue managed to dodge and those people had already stabbed him twice. Yuju quickly dodged 2 long swords on his side, and the tip of the spear was approaching. He quickly placed his ape cane across his chest to catch a blow. At this moment, a long sword suddenly tilted inward, and Yuzi couldn't avoid it. As he saw a sword about to pierce his shoulder blade, he suddenly saw 2 red lights shooting from the red eyes of the ape stick, hitting the person with the long sword in front of his chest. The person then flew backwards and fell to the ground. Captain Huo rushed to the side of the person and helped him up. The person's chest was bleeding profusely, and he interrupted, saying, "Help. General." I couldn't say anything more, so I rolled my eyes twice and fell to the ground without moving. On weekdays, this red light is only attracted by the power of Zhu Yan, and it is in harmony with it. Unexpectedly, it will shine on its own today, and it is so fierce that Yuju is also somewhat surprised. And when he saw this red light, for some reason, a fierce aura emanated from his heart, with a murderous intent. "You're so ruthless." Captain Hua stood up and glared at Yuju, lifting his double maces and sweeping them towards Yuju's waist. The other few also showed a murderous aura on their faces and rushed forward together. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Shock Loss of Fat Bone 1. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Shock Loss of Fat Bone 1. With the faint power of Zhu Yan, Yojue managed to dodge, but fortunately, with the help of the red light in the staff, those people didn't have much advantage. However, when the scorching heat of Zhu Yan rose up, a warm and gentle aura followed suit. If Zhu Yan's power were to flourish, Yojue's heart would burn like a raging fire, and all things in front of him wished they could be burned to ashes under the red light. But the power of the Qilin seemed to pour a clear spring into his heart, pouring out his anger and killing thoughts. At this moment, surrounded by these people, and with severe injuries, embarrassment was inevitable. However, although Yojue felt a bit angry and unhappy in his heart, it was not that he had to kill them quickly. A few people gathered around Yojue and were fighting together, but 2 people quietly came next to them. "Sister, look at that person quickly. Isn't he holding fat bone grass in his hand?" A girl dressed in apricot yellow clothes, about 13 or 14 years old, looked at a person next to her. "Yes, it's the fat bone grass," the person replied, also a woman, about 17 or 18 years old, dressed in a light blue shirt. "Look at those people surrounding him, they must be trying to grab this fat bone grass." The 2 of them hid behind a shrub and looked at the several people fighting in front of them. "These people are deceiving me with so much, it's really outrageous." The girl in the apricot yellow dress pursed her lips. "That person seems to have been injured," said the girl in light blue clothes. "Well, looking at his clothes being broken and blood-stained, with scars on his arms and face, he should be injured," said the girl in the apricot yellow dress. "The body movements are also slow, I'm afraid there may be some internal injuries," said the girl in light blue clothes. "Sister, look over there." The apricot yellow shirt pointed at one point and said. The person holding the long sword who was hit by the red light just now was still lying there. "Someone has already collapsed there, I don't know who this is on the same side as," said the girl in apricot yellow clothes. The girl in the light blue dress glanced at her finger and said, "It's with the side holding the gun and sword." "Sister, how do you know?" said the girl in apricot yellow clothes. "Look at the clothes on his body, they are similar to those of those people. Although the clothes of the person surrounded are broken, the original texture and embroidery look very exquisite, completely different," said the girl in the light blue clothes. The girl in the apricot yellow dress looked around for a while and chuckled softly, sure enough. Sister is still amazing. Just take a closer look and you'll know you're lazy, the girl in light blue tapped her head. Let's take a look at the situation during the war. That person looks really beautiful. The girl in apricot yellow pointed at Ju. The girl in the light blue dress glanced at her and said disapprovingly, where is it that looks good? It's not as good as brother Jiafeng. How could it be? I think it looks even better than your older brother, said the girl in apricot yellow clothes. Are you interested in him? The girl in the light blue dress smiled, look at the way he is being pushed around by these people. Even if his face can still be seen, it's not worth it. So many people are bullying him, he's already quite good at handling it like this, said the girl in apricot yellow clothes. The two of them were talking lively, but the fight over there was even more lively. Hua Xiaowei's pair of copper maces directly attacked Youjue's chest, while two others jumped up and stabbed him with two long spears, one on the left and one on the right. Youjue reluctantly avoided and suddenly felt a strong wind sweeping behind him. He quickly turned around and retreated back, while using his ape cane to counter the sweeping curved sword. But at this moment, his body skills were greatly reduced due to his serious injury, and he was swept directly into his eyes by the curved sword, causing blood to flow across his eyes immediately. Oh my, the apricot yellow shirt, who was watching from the side, exclaimed softly, his eyes. As blood burst out, a red light shot out from the Youjue staff, and the person who had hit his curved sword flew back a foot away. Another person quickly flew over to catch the person with the curved sword. The others saw that the ape stick in his hand was unpredictable, and their fear deepened. At this moment, they only surrounded him and dared not attack recklessly. The person who flew to pick him up called out a few times, but suddenly burst into tears. A few people on this side heard this and knew that the person was also unlucky, with a face full of sorrow and anger, and a fierce light in their eyes. They rushed towards Youjue again. Hua Xiaowei's pair of copper maces flew up and down, while another long sword and a long spear were also closely attacked. The person who was crying while holding the curved blade just now also picked up a long spear and quickly stabbed. At this moment, Youjue's eyes were blurred by blood and unable to see clearly. Completely relying on years of practicing intuition and dodging fierce beasts in the dark room, it is even more dangerous. Those people, disregarding life and death, are determined to take this fat bone grass. The two sides were inseparable, but suddenly a faint blue flashed through the chaotic battle. Youjue suddenly felt that his hand was empty, and Jigu grass had already been released. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Shock Loss of Fat Bone 2. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Shock Loss of Fat Bone 2. Those who surrounded him regardless of their own lives and were determined to grab this fat bone grass were also stunned. I saw the light blue drop on a large stone 3 feet away. A girl of 17 or 18 years old stood on the stone with a smile, looking at them. She held up the fat bone grass with one hand and smiled, saying, "Fat bone grass, it's here with me." Unexpectedly, such a person broke out of the slanted thorn and snatched the fat bone grass from his own hands. From the sight blocked by blood, Youjue vaguely saw a light blue graceful figure. At the moment when she approached her, Youjue felt that this person's cultivation was incomparable to these people just now. But now I urgently need this fat bone herb for healing, and I don't want to just snatch it from her. At that moment, the ape staff swung out, and 2 red lights rushed straight towards the girl in the light blue clothes on the stone. The other people also swung their guns and swords towards the girl on the stone. The girl in light blue clothes quickly leaped to the side to dodge as she saw them coming fiercely. But Youjue and those people immediately followed suit and attacked. At this moment, the girl in apricot yellow clothes held a pair of amber deer antlers in her hand and jumped into the chaos. She said to the girl in light blue clothes, "Sister Yuer, I'll help you." Yuer gave her a brilliant smile and said, "Thank you, Xiaomi." Yuer held the fat bone grass in one hand and resisted the sword with her bare hands. Xiaomi's pair of amber antlers came to assist, which made it much easier. As soon as Yojue and everyone saw that she had come to help, they intensified their attacks and were determined to grab the fat bone grass. Yuer dodged while suddenly shouting, "Where is the general waiting for help now?" Suddenly, Captain Huo was taken aback and replied, "At the border of Qiyu." Yuer said, "Oh," and suddenly jumped back onto the big stone again. Xiaomi also ran over along. The others immediately rushed over again. But when Yuer stretched out her hand, she suddenly threw Jigu grass at Huashaowei and smiled, saying, "I'm afraid Sister Qingyi doesn't want to run that far, so let's give it to you." Upon seeing the flying fat bone grass, Captain Hua immediately jumped up to pick it up. At this moment, although Yojue's vision was blocked by blood, he had already heard the sound of Jigu grass breaking through the wind. He immediately jumped up and rushed straight towards Jigu grass. Suddenly, a blurry light blue blocked my view. Yuer slapped her, and Yojue was in mid-air. She slapped her in the chest and fell backwards, falling to the ground. Captain Hua over there had already taken the Jigu grass in his hand and bowed to Yuer, saying, "Thank you very much." Xiaomi approached Yuer and said, "Sister, why don't you want fat bone grass? You didn't look at those people, even if you put in a lot of effort to get them, there must be someone dying and waiting for help. Besides, there are still 2 half-dead people lying on the ground. It's not very useful for us to bring them, just give them," Yuer said. "What if Sister Qingyi doesn't ride Qingxi for you?" Xiaomi said. "Think of another way," Yuer said. After Huashaowei received the Jigu grass, he quickly turned around and looked at the 2 people lying on the ground. He broke off some of the Jigu grass and fed each of them, then hung his breath. Yojue was blocked by Yuer and could not approach Huashaowei and others in any way. Feeling extremely angry, he waved his ape stick and 2 red lights rushed towards Yuer again. "Yuer sister, be careful!" Xiaomi quickly shouted. Yuer has dodged away. Captain Hua and others thanked Yuer again, then carried the injured 2 on their backs and headed down the mountain. Yuer smiled and said to Yojue, "They have already left. I'll kill you first, and then go after them," said the Yojue monkey staff coldly. Yuer laughed crisply and said, "You want to kill me? I'm afraid you can't kill me." Xiaomi said to Yojue from the side, "You don't have to worry. Without Jigu grass, Sister Qingyi can also cure your injury." "Treating injuries," said Yojue Qidao, feeling puzzled. "What are the origins and calculations of these 2 girls?" "Yes," Xiaomi nodded and said, "Sister Qingyi has excellent medical skills. She is currently in a nearby village. We will take you to find her, and she will definitely be able to cure you." Yuer also smiled and said, "I took the fat bone grass from you, and I will take responsibility for your injury." Yojue also thought to himself, "These 2 girls seem to be different from ordinary people. At this moment, they are seriously injured, but the fat bone grass is probably hopeless. But I don't know their background, if they were to plot against them." Seeing him hesitating, Yuer said, "You can't die from this injury for a while. You just don't want to go to the bathroom." Saying hello to Xiaomi, "Let's go back." Xiaomi let out an "ah" and said, if his eyes weren't treated earlier, would he be blind? "They are not willing to govern, so we cannot force others to do anything difficult," said Yuer. Xiaomi walked up to Yojue and said, "Don't worry, we don't have any malicious intentions. It's important for you to treat your injuries, so come with us." Yuju's eyes cannot see clearly. Listen carefully to the voice of Xiaomi nearby, clear and childish. It doesn't seem like a lie or deception. But the sound of heartbeat seems unusual, just not a sign of danger. "Now that I am seriously injured and the fat bone grass is hopeless, if I can borrow a doctor's hand and recover soon, I can also search for the divine turtle as soon as possible. But I'm also afraid that there might be any fraud involved." Xiaomi saw that he was still silent and said, "Sister Qingyi, there are not many people in the world who can match her medical skills. You can rest assured and go together, okay? Ju finally spoke up and said, "Thank you very much for your kindness, Mississippi. However, I'm afraid I won't be able to do it as it's inconvenient for my eyes. I injured myself through my eyes and held on to either of them, but there was an unexpected situation. Just pinch her lifeline and you'll be able to escape." Therefore, in such words. Upon hearing this, Yu sneered softly, "That's a good idea. Just now those people surrounded him like this, and his eye injury didn't cause him any big deal. When you came to grab the fat bone grass in my hand, didn't you recognize the direction quite accurately? Is this suddenly invisible? This guy has a lot of ulterior motives." Xiaomi didn't think so much. He looked at Yu and then at Yojue. Suddenly, his face turned red and he said, "Then, I'll lead you away." "Thank you, then," Ju said. Xiaomi's face blushed even deeper, and she reached out her hand to Yojue, saying, "That would offend you." She had not yet touched Yojue's hand, but was stopped by one hand. Yu smiled at her and said, "Xiaomi, the mountain road is not easy to walk. Sister, come and take care of it." As he spoke, he grabbed Yojue's left hand and said meaningfully, "Young master, be careful." End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Double Pulse Single Seal Trapped Double Beasts 1. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Chapter 10. Double Pulse Single Seal Trapped Double Beasts 1. To Yojue's ear, the girl's heart was calm, but she held her hand and a sense of vigilance came from her. Yojue smiled coldly in his heart and said, "Thank you for the reminder." Yu led Yojue down the mountain. Xiaomi followed behind the two of them. The three of them walked north for less than half an hour before arriving at a small fishing village. The people who come and go in the village are all dressed as ordinary fishermen. Wearing a low hat on the head, wearing bulky clothes and pants with some fish scales on them, emitting the salty smell of seawater, and wearing a pair of boots made of animal fur on the feet, designed to be waterproof. Yu and Xiaomi led Yojue into a simple courtyard, where there were some dried fish hanging and two black fish with long beards and arms thick were kept in a large water tank. The three of them stopped in front of an old, low wooden door, where the melodious and joyful sound of flutes floated out. Xiaomi said to Yu, who was holding Yojue, "Here we are. Yu sister, go and invite Qingyi's sister out." "Okay, you guys wait here," Yu said, quietly pouring magic into her hands. Yojue suddenly felt stiff all over, and her hands and feet couldn't move. Yujiuking spoke urgently, but remained silent. "What's wrong?" Xiaomi asked, seeing that his situation was not right. "Don't worry, just let him be honest and not bully you," Yu smiled. "Just wait here obediently." As he spoke, he pushed open the wooden door and entered the house. There are only simple tables and chairs in the room, and no one is there. Yu walked into the inner room again, and a woman in plain white clothes was sitting at the table by the window, playing a green flute lightly. Two children aged around 7 or 8 are gathered around her, listening to her playing. A boy and a girl, with extremely similar appearances, are a pair of twins. On the other side of the table sat a man of about 20 years old, dressed in a long blue shirt, with a beautiful face and starry eyes like water. He looked at the woman playing the flute and her two children with a smile on his face. On a dilapidated wooden bed, there lay a man in his 30s, with a sickly expression on his face, looking over here. Upon seeing her enter, the woman in plain white blinked at her, while the man in a blue robe stood up and gestured for her to sit down. Yu nodded and smiled at the two of them, and sat down where the man in the blue robe had just sat. The man in a blue long shirt walked behind the woman in a plain white shirt and still looked at the three of them. After playing a song, the two children happily said, "It sounds really nice." "All right, let's go play," the woman in plain white smiled. "Can you play it to us again tomorrow?" the little girl said to the woman in plain white clothes. "Okay," the woman in plain white replied. The two children happily held hands and went out. Where did you go to cause trouble again? The woman in plain white turned her head and said to Yor. I didn't cause any trouble, I just went for a stroll on the mountain, Yor smiled. You promised me to listen to me before I took you out, said the woman in plain white clothes. Did I not listen to Sister Qingyi? I am obedient, Yor said, getting up and walking to the woman in plain white clothes. She pulled her sleeve and shook it, then blinked at the man in green behind the woman in plain white clothes. Right, Brother Changli. These two people are by Li Qingyi and Lu Mo in Qingluo Peak. Lu Mo smiled at Yor and said, yes. See, do you still believe what Brother Changli said? Yor said proudly. I've only been out of the village for a while, and when I came back, I didn't see your shadow. Didn't I tell you to wait here for us to come back? Qingyi scolded softly, there are many people and things outside, so don't always run around. In case. No, last time was just an accident. I wouldn't have been so unlucky every time, Yor said. Unexpected. You've lost half your life, what's making your mother so anxious about? Qingyi said. My mother is like this, she likes to make big fuss. When she encounters one or two bad guys, fights and gets hurt, it's normal. But she always gets angry, and now even Qingxi doesn't allow me to ride. Yor pursed her lips slightly. Is this a big fuss? Qingyi shook her head and said, it's really. Where did you go just now? Why did you come back now? Lu Mo asked Yor. Sister Qingyi, have you ever heard of jigu grass? Yor said to Qingyi. Well, jigu grass is a healing herb that has a miraculous effect on those who are seriously injured or dying. It only grows in deep mountains and is not common, Qingyi nodded and said. There is a branch on Shuiming Mountain nearby, Yor said clearly, indicating her intention. Unfortunately, she was unable to retrieve it. How do you know? Qingyi said strangely. I saw it occasionally in Grandpa Shui's medicine book that day, Yor said. I think Sister Qingyi must like it, so I went to look for it on Shuiming Mountain. This child, Qingyi smiled, if you really come here, I have to listen to your mother. Sister Qingyi. Yor grabbed Qingyi's sleeve and shook it again. Did you find it? Lu Mo said later. Upon hearing Lu Mo's question, Yor suddenly remembered that she had brought a seriously injured person and was waiting outside. She quickly said to Qingyi, don't talk about this for now, Sister Qingyi. Someone was injured and is right outside the door. Can you help him take a look? Who is it? How did you get hurt? Qingyi exclaimed in shock, did you get hurt? No, Xiaomi and I are fine. It was that person who was injured himself, Yor said. That's good, Qingyi let out a sigh of relief. Since he has already arrived, let's take a look at that person's situation first. It's not convenient here, let him go outside. Speaking, he looked at the person half lying on the bed. The person said to them, I'm not in any way, girl. You just need to see if it's convenient for you. Qingyi and Lu Mo walked up to the bed and said to the person, Tang Bo, take a break first. Let's go out and take a look. Okay, if you need anything, just let me know. Don't be polite, Tang Bo said. Thank you very much, Lu Mo said to him. Thank you, Tang Bo. Yor also said to Tang Bo. The three of them came out and opened the door, while Xiaomi and Yojue were still waiting outside the door. Xiaomi, come in first, Yor said. Seeing the door open, Xiaomi jumped into the room and said, why has it been so long? Blinking at Yor again and again. Yor smiled at her and said, come on, why are you in such a hurry? Sister Qingyi, it's him, said Yor, pointing to the absolute Qingyi outside the door suddenly remembered, what was the name of this person? Before I even asked, I patted Yojue's shoulder, released my magic, and asked, what is your name? However, Yojue retreated 3 feet back and tried to look at this group of people with a blurry gaze. Still with this expression, really. If it weren't for stealing your fat bone grass, I would have let you die in the mountains and let the wild wolves eat it. Yue sneered. Qingyi stood by, her eyes fixed on Yojue, and a surprised expression appeared on her face. Lu Mo immediately noticed a change in Qingyi's expression and stared at Yujue once. Young master, how did you get injured? Can you tell me? Qingyi said to Yojue. Just now, Yojue heard Yue call her Qingyi's sister and knew that she was the shrewd person in medical skills. Without answering, she asked, can you help me treat it? Qingyi looked sideways at Yue. Yue spread out her hand and sighed, saying, either, I'll throw him back into the mountain now. Ah! Xiaomi immediately widened his eyes and looked at Yue. It's not that Sister Qingyi doesn't treat him, and asking a question is so troublesome. Do you think doctors are all immortals? Yue said helplessly to Xiaomi. Although Sister Qingyi can also be considered as half a fairy, what good can it be to treat someone with cold eyebrows and eyes? May I ask your name and surname, young master? Qingyi said. After carefully listening to the voices of each person's pulse, Yojue was still calm and temporarily replied, I am Yojue. So it's young master Yojue, please sit down, Qingyi said. I'll check your pulse first. Yujue didn't even enter the room and sat on the bench in the courtyard. Qingyi took out a small square silk scarf from her sleeve and draped it over Yojue's wrist to diagnose his pulse. After a thorough diagnosis, she withdrew her hand and furrowed her eyebrows slightly. How's it going? Xiaomi said urgently from the side. Qingyi picked up Yojue's arm with one hand, and covered her wrist with the other, examining it carefully. How did young master Yojue get injured? Can you tell me? Qingyi continued to ask. I just met my former enemy on the road and got a bit injured during the fight, said Yojue. I see. Qingyi nodded slightly and gave a glance to Lu Mo, then stood up and said, young master Yojue, please rest here for a while. Yue and I will go pick some herbs. Speaking, she pulled up Yue and walked towards the outside of the courtyard. Lu Mo understood and followed behind. Yue was afraid of the red light of Yojue's ape stick, and when she turned around, she wanted to use her magic to Yojue. Yojue learned from her previous experience and immediately blocked the ape stick in front of her. Xiaomi quickly stood in front of Yojue and said, Sister Yue, I will be careful. Don't make things difficult for Yojue, young master. Yue looked at her and suddenly bypassed Xiaomi and reached out to grab the Yojue monkey wand. End of this chapter.